Yo, what's going on, guys? Chris Bonner here, Overtime Athletes. I have a special guest, Troy Leaf. Troy, appreciate you coming on. For today's video, what I want to kind of discuss is essentially basketball skills training. Troy is a elite level basketball skills coach. You guys know I just came out with a recent program, Built to Ball, which is basically performance basketball training, performance training. And I was fortunate enough to link up with Troy through working with his brother. And I just thought it would be a good video to kind of bring you on and be able to discuss with these guys your approach, kind of your background, and your approach to basketball skills training. And I figured it would be of high value. I had the privilege of being able to watch Troy work with his brother and other high-level basketball athletes. So I wanted you to kind of share. So first, let's start off by, as far as the introduction goes, just kind of give a feel for your career, how you kind of got into skills training, and kind of what led you up to this point right now.
Yeah, so I played, obviously, high school, college. Was super successful in high school and both at the high school and college level.
Let me add, you were the leading scorer in your county, and it still hold up,
right? San Diego, California, leading scorer in San
Don't
Diego
leave that
history.
out, man. You got to boost up a little bit.
Yep. And then in college, I ended up went to UC Santa Barbara out of high school on a basketball scholarship. Finished at a Division II where I was a first-team All-American at the D2. And then decided after playing that I wanted to get straight into coaching. A lot of guys go the playing route, and there's nothing wrong with that route. I decided I wanted to go straight into the coaching side of the game. So jumped straight into high school coaching, coached a team that was top 10 in the country high school my first year out of college. And then my second year was fortunate enough to get linked up with an NAIA basketball program in Southern California. So I was an assistant coach there where we were super successful as well. And then the opportunity came up where my brother actually is a professional basketball player and he got drafted. And I went with him and kind of took over as his full-time player development guy. So through that relationship was able to pick up a few other guys on his team. So trained a few high-level guys. At the same time was coaching AAU basketball for the Compton Magic, who's a top 5 program in the country. So was able to coach multiple McDonald's All-Americans on that team. So was able to pick up a lot of training tips and the way guys work out over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So I think I can bring some of that to these guys through this program.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we've discussed is, we've kind of talked about the reason why we align so much is because you see a lot of guys out there who coach online now, right? They're a dime a dozen. And one thing that I've noticed from your type of coaching and your approach is it's no frills, it's not a lot of gimmicks, it's about focusing on a lot of the fundamentals, putting in hard work. So, if you can, just kind of tell us about your approach, tell us about your 5 pillars. If you guys don't know also too,
we got 4 pillars.
4, sorry. If you guys don't know, I actually teamed up with him, and he put together a program of basically what he's doing with these guys. You guys can check that down in the link below. But if you can, just kind of tell us about your approach and tell us what separates you from a lot of these, Instagram and YouTubers out there who are kind of real gimmicky, and kind of use a lot of different props and stuff like that. I know there's a time and place for everything, but just kind of tell these guys what the real approach to training skills at the elite levels is.
Yeah. So for me, something that I've realized, if you go into a NBA gym in the off season or a high-level college program in the off season, and you go into these gyms and you watch them train, very rarely do they have anything on the floor except for one basketball and the coach they're working with. And you go on YouTube or Google and you type in, skills training basketball, and you see a lot of stuff that's just not going to translate. You see guys doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and if it works for you, it works for you. But I'm a firm believer that you do game-like moves at game-like speeds, and that's what translates. So the more you can do a rep the exact same way that you're going to do it in a game, that's going to translate over to where if you're going out there and you're dribbling 2 basketballs around for an hour and a half, and then you get in your game. Well, there's one basketball, and you're no longer stationary. There's a time and place to do 2-ball handling, but I'm a big believer in doing game-like speeds, game-like reps, and then also just like your strength programs, where you're going to progress over the course of an off season and focus on different stages at different times. If you're at the very beginning of the off season, you might be able to work on a little bit more stuff than your specific role. So if you're, say you have a 6-month off season, I like to focus on the first 3 months or so on kind of a well-rounded skill set. So that's what this program is more of like your rounded skill set, working on a little bit of everything. So this is good for people that are all the way from beginners to as advanced as you want to get, because it's basic moves, but it's moves that you're going to use in games, footwork and game speed stuff. But the first few months of an off season, I'm going to do more of the well-rounded skill stuff. And then as it gets closer to the season, every player's game is different. Everybody has a different role on the teams that they're on at the time. So when it gets closer to the season, I tend to lean more towards specific skills that are going to translate for that player. So for a power forward, it's going to look completely different than what a point guard is going to work on for the 2 months leading up to a season. So it's really easy to get caught up in just YouTubing or Googling how to be a better basketball player. And you see guys that, quite frankly, never really played at the high school level, maybe played. And there's nothing wrong with that if guys are good at teaching the game. But a lot of these guys, there's nothing behind what they're saying. Just because they can do something really gimmicky with a basketball and they have 1 million followers or can jump real high, if you see them actually on the basketball court, they might not be able to do half the things they're talking about, or actually are just very subpar basketball players. So one of the big things that separates me, like you said, no gimmicks. I'm all about the work.
And you know, obviously, if they get good at one particular thing, they're rehearsing that one particular thing. It might not translate over to the court. That's one thing that we discuss a lot. So tell us about these kind of pillars that you focus on as far as that you want to fundamentally elevate in each basketball athlete.
Yeah, so we broke it down. Chris and I got together, talked about it. He kind of picked my brain. So we broke it down to 4 pillars, and they might sound kind of obvious, but if you're, playing the game of basketball at a high level, there's 4 things you got to be really good at. You got to be able to shoot the ball as one. So we talk a little bit about, your form, your technique and shooting, which is your first pillar. So we can get more in depth on that in later programs. We're going to put out just a shooting program, and we can fine tune all those areas of your game. But that first pillar that I focus on with my guys is shooting. If there's anything mechanically wrong there, or something with their hand placement, I like to change that up and make sure they're doing everything the way they need to. The second one is ball handling, and obviously in order to do a lot of what you need to do in a basketball game, you got to be able to handle the ball. So whether you're a big guy and you might only need to do 2 dribbles at a time, or you're a point guard and you got to be able to handle the full length of the floor, I can tailor that towards basically what each guy needs, because a center's ball handling drills might look completely different than a point guard's ball handling drills. And then the third one, which people don't tend to focus on this one, is your defense and your footwork. When you see guys go to the gym to work out, how often are guys like really teaching or learning defense? Rarely ever. You go in there and guys are just like shooting for 45 minutes and they leave. It's like, well, half the game is played on the defensive side of the floor. So just even teaching basic defensive fundamental principles, or just a big thing for me on the defensive side is willpower. I think that so much of defense can come down to who wants it more. So that's a big thing for me. And then the fourth pillar that I focus on is finishing. So a little bit different than shooting. Shooting, I think, is more, outside. Finishing is where I think can separate the elite level players from the good players, because a good player might be able to score from one level. So either you can just shoot or you can just finish. I think the elite level players kind of have a combination of both of those things, where they can shoot from the outside as well as finish different ways around the rim. So we're going to get more specific as we release more programs. But for this first one, it's more that well-rounded, kind of hitting all 4 pillars, working on our well-rounded game. And then down the line, we're going to put out more individualized and specific programs for each pillar.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. So for the guys that are watching today, who, if you can invest in it, check it out. For the guys who can't, to give them value, would you say the number one thing is obviously the situations and the drills they're doing? One thing that I can't harp on enough, that kind of sounds common sense, but a lot of times you repeat the common sense things so that guys don't get off track. Would it be to, if you're going to do your skills training today, the number one thing you need to do is either at game speed or game scenario?
I think that they kind of can morph into the same thing, because you might not be able to, if you're just by yourself, you might not be able to mimic.
So how would somebody by themselves be able to do that?
You go through the mood. it's all the mental approach to the game. You go through each move and each drill as if you're in a game. So the exact game speed, you might flip it to yourself like you're receiving a pass. However you can mimic that game, even if you're by yourself or if you have one person working with you, however you can mimic that game speed and that game scenario, that's what I would suggest doing. But one of the big things I want people to focus on in this program is not rushing through it. It's a 3-month program, but if it might take you a little bit longer to get certain points of it than others. So if you rush through it, it defeats the purpose of it. If you're struggling with a certain footwork or you see something that might be a little bit over your head, take your time learning that. You might start at 50% speed for 10, 20 minutes until you get the footwork down. So don't just rush through it just to get through the drills for the day or whatever. Make sure you really have each part down before you start going full speed. That's why the first part of the program is all about our fundamentals and building our footwork and building our understanding for how to do these moves.
Right.
Because if you just go rush into it and start going full speed, all of your footwork and your mechanics, everything's going to be a little bit off. So a big thing that I want to focus on here early in the programs is making sure that you have a full grasp on what we're trying to accomplish before you just jump in and start going full speed.
Got you. There you have it. And we'll make some more of these, kind of going through those each ones and kind of give them tips and stuff that they can be able to utilize immediately. But like you said, if you guys are interested in that full progression, because really the secret sauce is, I know you're a big proponent of game speed, game scenario, but after looking at the program, from what I see, it's really taking them from the floor, building that foundation, and just intermediately advancing every single movement until you get to a point where they're translating onto the court and becoming a better basketball athlete.
100%.
So yeah, there you have it. We'll get into the next couple videos later on, but Troy, appreciate you so much, man. And again, if you guys are interested, Elite Basketball Academy, full 3-month program, just came out with it. You guys can check out the link down below, and we'll come out with more videos for you basketball athletes.
All right.